What does it mean to be in character versus out of character in a role-playing game like Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, that's a good question, and one we're going to share with you right now.
Essentially, to be in character means you are your character. I learned in playing online role-playing games to never refer to my character as me. Always refer to my character as the character's name. The character did this. The character thought this. I'm actually getting different advice for tabletop RPGs where you're in person or via camera. They're saying I, me, and my instead of, well, they do this, or my character does this, or the character's name does this.
We're going to think about it kind of like acting. And when an actor takes on a role, they are that person. So it's a first-person perspective. So I'm not going to say, my character, Princess Doofusface, does these things. I'm going to say, I cast Farah! Or, you know, whatever.
Now, that was very dramatic, and you can totally do it like that if you really want to. I don't tend to be quite as overly overt or extra in my role-playing. However, I still get the point across. I usually change like a little bit of the way I sit in my chair, maybe a little bit of the way my voice goes, but I don't change, like I don't do voices. I just don't do any of that stuff. I know Critical Role has made it where everybody does voices and they're all actors and this and that, but in reality, we're not all actors. I mean, I'm not an actor.
We're just people.
Yeah, we're just people having fun. But she's right. You do have to take on some amount of role, you know, that's why it's called a role-playing game, of your character, and you are going to know things your character does not know.
But vice versa, your character is going to know things that you don't know, and that's part of the fun, but I also think part of the limitation that is perceived for new players. You don't have to know every single thing about D&D in order to enjoy the game. There are certain aspects based on your character's development, their backstory, what you've chosen, where they lived, who they grew up with, their influences in their life, and the DM should be able to assist you and give you knowledge that's appropriate for a character.
Also comes into something interesting. You have different skills, like the history skill. You say to the DM, well, would my character know this? Because the player doesn't know, but the character might. So they have you do a roll to find out, do you know this or not? The higher your skill in that particular skill, the higher your point in that particular skill, the more chance you have that your character knows that. Now, here's a vice versa. Say you come across a monster that the DM describes in such a way that the player, you, knows exactly what it is, but your character has never seen this before. It's very inappropriate, and it's called metagaming, to automatically know what its weaknesses are, know everything about it. That's just wrong. That's using out-of-character information in character. Even if you played another character that knew what that was, those two characters probably don't know each other and never talked about this.
This out-of-character versus in-character dilemma goes further than just that monster that you may be familiar with that your character that you're playing has never met. It can also go within interactions within your team. Say your team has separated and one has gone to the northern section of the dungeon and the other has gone to the southern end of the dungeon. Well, you're still physically in the same room as people, but your characters are not. So it's inappropriate for the people in the southern group to react based on what they're hearing is happening in the northern group, unless their characters can actually in-game hear clues that are happening.
Right. Another example, and this is one that I see pretty often, and it bothers me, but it's one of those like fine lines. Note-taking is a huge deal, and I think everybody should be taking notes on what is happening. But do you take notes in character or out of character? What I mean by that is, let's say one of your party members is having a private conversation, but everybody's still there. So you are hearing this even though you're not supposed to be hearing it. You know, it's supposed to be one of those blinders things. But you're hearing this conversation that's going on, and they're mentioning all these facts and names and places and things, and everybody in your party is writing all this down. To me, that's metagaming. It is actually, you're taking that information out of character. You're not there. You can't possibly know this. Plus, it takes away the idea that, okay, the DM told this person this. Now they're going to relay that information to the rest of the party. They may have gotten it wrong. They may misinterpret it. They may do it on purpose. It could be part of their character. It could be manipulation. It could be any number of things. And I think that element needs to be represented, because we've all heard the thing, like if you have 10 people in a row and one person whispers to the first person, they whisper, the story is completely different by the time it gets to the 10th person. Same thing here. I don't think any of us in real life walk around, well, some of us walk around with a video camera attached to us pretty often, but most of us are not recording every single thing that we do to have an actual playback of every single thing said, every single thing we see all day long. So why would your character in D&D have that same availability?
One of our good friends, Debra, who we play D&D with, is a librarian in real life. I'm not kidding you. So she is a meticulous note taker, but she takes her notes in her character's voice.
Yeah.
So one of her characters is a tabaxi. She's a bard. She's a complete spasmo. And so she writes these really elaborate notes that are pretty much nonsensical. Yeah. And reading them back, you're like, okay, what does the blue carpet from the north singing to the elves mean? I don't know. But that's appropriate for that character. And her character would be just as confused by their own notes as what the player is.
And they often are.
Completely appropriate. Meanwhile, she also plays another character who's full-on wizardly scholar, and so their notes are very meticulous and very precise and completely void of emotion. So their feel is very different, and it's just the facts. So they may omit things like there's a child in peril who's suffering from the loss of their parents. It's just like, no, you have to go to this place. So there's a different feeling there, and there's a different omission of information based on how that character would react to that situation.
So, that's on note-taking. And there is something to be said for, I am taking notes for the entire party so that we all know what happened. But see, that goes right back to what I was saying too, in character versus out of character information. You don't have a court stenographer walking around with you. It should be based on everybody's memories and what notes they took as their character. That's a very important thing, because as your character, you would act maybe differently than you as a player would.
And this brings me to one of my favorite characters that I played, and her name is Pinky. She is a half-orc bard, and she has a really interesting world perspective that's very different from most people's perspective based on her dichotomy of her upbringing and what she pursues and feels like she should do in life. So she has no concept of authority. She has no concept of...
I got to DM this one.
Of proper manners and etiquette, yet she has a very strict concept of manners and etiquette. It's a really weird crossover
She
thing.
was polite. For a half-orc, she was very polite, actually.
Yes, but the princess, who she should know, she just disregarded, and, oh, she's a princess. She's Princess what's her name? I don't know. Now, they were working up to a meeting that was supposed to occur with this princess, and she still didn't take the time and effort. It's like
Princess what's her name?
To remember her name. Luckily for the whole party, that meeting never took place, but that was in character for her to disregard that aspect of the information. Yet when she was sharing a meal with one of her fellow party members, and they didn't know how to properly eat fish.
I remember that.
She's an island girl, so she was all about the fish, and so she taught him how to eat, what to eat, and what part was considered a delicacy, and what part was considered not proper to eat, and so forth, and went on and on. And so it was funny.
Now, something that I started to touch on is how your character would act. And this is one of those things where the idea of D&D is not to win or lose. It's to tell a great story and have fun. So by having fun usually should mean everybody in the party has fun, including your DM. So if that means that in this situation, you as a player know this is what I should do. This is how to solve this puzzle and move things forward. However, that action is something that your character either wouldn't think of, wouldn't do, or couldn't conceive could be the right thing to do in any way, shape, or form. Or doing so might hurt the rest of your party, and your character would never do that. Even though you as a player know that's how I can win, you probably shouldn't do it anyway, because that's not in character. That's using out of character information. That is actually a form of metagaming still. I know that if I do this thing, we can win, but really it's only me winning, not the whole party, which means I'm the only one having fun, which means I just destroyed the game.
One of my favorite moments in a game that Brian recently DM'd for myself and some friends of ours was this fight where we were all playing rogues. All of the party members were rogues. And we were in a lair filled with goblins, and there was a trap set, and 2 of the 3 got caught in the trap. And it was still winnable. It was certainly more challenging at this point, but...
More challenging than I expected it to be, let's put it that way.
It could have proceeded maybe okay. Well, the one individual that wasn't trapped in the cage was like, okay, we surrender. And that was like something that Brian certainly wasn't prepared for.
I wasn't ready.
And we were just like, oh yeah, well that completely makes sense in that scenario. We weren't really the barbarians going full battle. We're more the sneaky, try to avoid confrontation, and this was a full-on, we might be, up the creek, if you will. And so we give up.
It was one of those moments that I then took 4 or 5 pages of notes and basically just threw them away because they were useless now. But I was so happy because I went, wow, that was probably the best thing your character could have done. And that's the character that he was playing. That is exactly how he would do it. Not that he was a coward. It's that he was smart enough to know we're screwed.
Yep.
This is not working out for us.
Yep.
Could we win? Maybe, but not without some serious risk here. But if we surrender, we get a chance to fight another day, a chance to escape another day. And, well, they did later on.
And if you think about it, a party of rogues, are they going to have better chances fighting face-to-face a large group of people, or are they going to have better chances escaping a prison?
Exactly.
They're going to have better chances escaping that prison.
If they were playing all barbarians and they said, I surrender, I'd be like, you're going to lose your barbarian card. Obviously, if that's the way your character is, because even a barbarian doesn't have to always be, barbaric stupid. I mean, they don't have to just kill until they die. They can go, oh, you know what? This might be an unwinnable fight. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's part of your character. And you gotta remember, the DM gets to play that way too. Monsters should not just throw themselves at you until they all die. This concept comes from video games where, your party just killed a mob of 20, and then there's that one guy that comes up last, and he attacks you too. It's like, really? Really? Who would do that? So I don't like to DM that way. Instead, I'll be like, I'm out of here. And they take off. And if they give chase, that's fine. But you got to play your character as what the character would do. Now, that's not an excuse to be a jerk. Okay? If your character is a jerk, expect consequences. In other words, if you say, well, my character's evil, this is just what he would do, and you go and you steal from all your party members, and you punch people in the face just because, and you mouth off to every single NPC, and you attack people randomly, guess what? Your party's probably going to kill you and leave your body for the crows. And you know what? That is perfectly acceptable because that's what their characters would do. So be very careful with what kind of character you play. And we've talked about this other times too. Play a character that wants to be a team player in general, and play a character that you can actually play without feeling guilty about. Because I can't do evil very well. I have a really hard time being mean to people until they deserve it. In which case, am I really being evil?
But consequences is a great thing to keep in mind in dealing with character versus out of character situations.
Absolutely.
Just because you know out of character that consequence is probably going to occur, you have to get back into the skin of your character and understand, is my character low wisdom? Would they perhaps not have the foresight to go, oh wait, that's a bad choice? Maybe they wouldn't, and maybe they'd go ahead with that and then deal with the consequences that come later. Just because there's a consequence doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just a part of the story and something that you should be prepared as a player to deal with.
Because, let's be honest, if you make it through an entire campaign of D&D and you never even take 1 hit point of damage, you never fail a save, and you never miss a skill save, what fun is that? It's just, it's kind of boring. I mean, I'd just say, oh yeah, that was uneventful and unexciting. But that's in character versus out of character. Your character has no idea that they're a character. Mind-blowing, I know. They have no idea what hit points are. They have no idea that you just rolled a d20 to see if they made that save or not. They just know there's a fireball coming at their face. That's all they know. And that's important. Your character has no idea that they're part of a game.
So the easiest way to keep in character versus out of character is always in your head ask, what would my character do? And if you follow that guideline and all your decisions and all your verbiage and all your actions within the game, you should be good on your path to staying in character and avoiding that out of character mess.
Thanks for watching, and may the rolls be ever in your favor.
Bye-bye.